the nation's capital, the Conservative Caucus presents Conservative Roundtable, an in-depth look at today's most important issues.
Welcome to Conservative Roundtable. I'm Howard Phillips, chairman of the Conservative Caucus, which sponsors these broadcasts. Our guest for this edition is Robert Hoy. Mr. Hoy is a photographer. He's worked for a number of publications, including the Washington Star, and he is quite interested in what's been happening in Europe vis-a-vis the European Union. As you may know, the European Union came into being as the result of 50 years of incremental steps, which were supposedly not related to what has now emerged. The theme for the European Union has been economic integration. That's the phrase being used for the North American Union. But economic integration has led to a situation in which the 27 countries which are part of the European Union have surrendered control of their political destinies and their self-determination to elements of the European Union in Brussels, Strasbourg, and Luxembourg. The Conservative Caucus Foundation led a tour to the various member countries of the European Union several years ago. We attended meetings of the European Parliament, and we studied it in great detail. Mr. Hoy is current on these issues, and one of the things which has attracted his attention is the fact that a single country can block implementation, full implementation of the European Union design if it rejects adherence to it. And Ireland has voted against membership in the European Union, but the powers that be said, you got it wrong, let's do it again. Pick it up from there.
Well, yes, Howie, thank you for having me on. Ireland is the only country left that is fighting what is known as the Treaty of Lisbon. Now, Ireland did join the European Union, but the problem is that the fine print now is coming up, the things they didn't tell them in the past. And Ireland assumed, like a lot of countries did, that they would have some control over their immigration, for example, their foreign policy. And now that the election that's going to be held says, no, you give up everything. You go into this European Union and you become just a state, like in the United States. You don't have any control.
Well, the former president of Germany said that 78% of the decisions affecting Germany are made not by the German people, but in Brussels. Mm-hmm. How does Ireland's participation in the European Union differ from that of the United Kingdom?
Well, first of all, let me say real quick that the reason that Ireland is voting this time is that in their constitution, the people have the right to vote on any treaty that has to do with foreign policy. And that is not, as far as I understand, in other countries. So the English have a lot more power, of course, in a bigger country, more powerful country. And it is the small countries like Ireland that really are really going to suffer if they continue if they support the treaty.
Well, at one point, the Conservative Party in the United Kingdom said that they would have a referendum on common currency with the European Union. Where does that stand now?
Well, right now, it's interesting you mentioned that because just lately the government of Czech Republic has said that they would back Ireland if there was people vote either way. They're going to back the Irish.
Václav Klaus, the president of the Czech Republic, has been an outspoken, articulate critic of the Lisbon Treaty.
That's right. And now the British are saying that if they need some encouragement, basically, and if the Czech Republic stands by Ireland, then the British say that they will have this election that they're anticipating.
Yeah, Gordon Brown has not agreed to that. Oh, has he really?
Well, Gordon Brown is not agreed yet, but it looks like he's being pushed in that direction.
Well, he's in very bad shape politically, and a year from now he might no longer be the prime minister.
That's right.
And if the Conservative Party comes to power, and if they follow the thinking of their grassroots, they will favor a referendum and will be reluctant to surrender their rights.
That's right.
To the Lisbon Treaty.
Well, the thing about the Lisbon Treaty that is so incredibly undemocratic is this is the third time that the Irish people have voted on this particular treaty. And each time they say they don't want it, they reject it, the European Union doesn't say they don't steal the election. They just say, well, okay, we'll have another election.
And they've offered them all kinds of inducements to change their stand.
Exactly. They've bribed them, and also they've threatened them that if they don't pass this treaty, there's going to be all kinds of difficulties for Ireland.
Now, I think it's interesting that Pope Benedict, in his recent visit to the Czech Republic, has warned about the abandonment of Christianity in Europe. And in a way, although he didn't specifically get involved in the debate over the Lisbon Treaty, his remarks could only be taken as supportive of those who worry about the rejection of the Christian underpinnings of European civilization.
Well, absolutely. And the real situation with the European Union that is most controversial, really, is that they really want to bring Turkey into Europe as a member state. And it is totally rejected by every public opinion poll in Europe. Everybody's against it.
Well, is that because of the religious differences?
Religious differences and political differences. Turkey has never been considered really a part of Europe. And the other fear that a lot of people have is that if Turkey comes in, it'll open up the doors to, let's say, Tunisia, for example, because in some ways they're very liberal with women's rights or what have you. So it'll open up a door that the Europeans can't control. So the Irish are putting their foot down, and if you don't give the European Union what they want, they'll just have another election. There'll be a fourth election if they need it.
You think they get away with that?
I think they can. There's been 30 now, so they're very brazen. They're very brazen.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah. And is secession possible? Can a government which has joined the European Union change its mind?
That's, again, an interesting question. Now, I am not completely clear on this, but I understand that there was, in the original documents of the European Union, excuse me, that a country could secede from the European Union. But I don't know if they still honor that. I rather doubt it.
Now, one of the architects of the Lisbon Treaty was the former Premier of France, Giscard d'Estaing, who is really not an ally of Sarkozy, the current leader of France. Have Sarkozy or Angela Merkel or any of the other European leaders expressed misgivings about what's happening?
They may in private, but they really haven't come out in support of Ireland. And that's why in Czech Republic, the Czech Republic was so welcome. The Irish welcomed that because that's the only government that has really stood by the Irish. There's a lot of commentators and politicians throughout Europe, but Czech Republic is the only one that said they'll help the Irish. In fact, you talk about secession, there's a possibility Czech Republic would pull out.
Now, how many of the 27 countries which are part of the European Union employ the euro? Do any of them, other than Britain, honor their own currency?
I think Britain at this point is the only one, if I remember. And some countries have both. I was in Poland about 2 years ago, and they have both the zloty and the euro. So and then eventually they phase them out. So there's probably several countries that are in the process of phasing out their own currency.
During the debate over the Maastricht Treaty, I visited some of the countries, and I know that we had speakers from Denmark talk to our group, and I know there was strong opposition to the Maastricht Treaty among the Danish, but it went through. Is there significant popular opposition still in countries such as Denmark?
Oh, sure. Denmark particularly. Also, as you know, Holland, in the beginning, Holland and France voted down the Constitution. So both countries went into the European Union, and then, so as you were mentioning at the beginning of the show here, that this is done step by step. And then they came along and said,
the iron and coal community.
That's right.
Treaty of Rome, all of this stuff.
All this stuff.
And then incrementally they got what they wanted. It's like the frog in the pot, raising the temperature a degree at a time.
Absolutely. And so when a country like Denmark and Holland went into the European Union, it didn't sound so bad. It sounded like a pretty good deal. And then they came along and they said, by the way, we have this new constitution we want you to pass. And in 3 countries, the people voted it down. But then they just said, well, okay, we'll forget about that. We'll go to something else. Yeah. So they don't really The elections are a fraud.
So there is no constitution right now.
Well, there is a constitution, and they're implementing it without full support of all the countries, the population.
What were those three countries?
It was Denmark, as far as I know, Denmark, France, and Holland. Mm-hmm. And one thing I might mention about these elections is that when a country like those three countries voted, the people voted it down in a national referendum, then immediately their own particular governments would say, okay, well, we'll just have let the politicians vote on it. Yeah. And they vote in the...
Take it away from the people.
Take it away from... Right.
Don't let the people decide.
No.
We have to take a break. We'll be back with Robert Hoy, who is the head of Libertas. And we'll talk about what Libertas is and what it's doing, and about some of the things Mr. Hoy does in Russia and elsewhere in Europe. Stay with us. We'll be back right after these messages.
Hi, I'm Congressman Tom Tancredo. You know, I just returned from a hearing on the southern border in a place called Brownsville, Texas. One of the participants in the hearing told us that for them, a border really doesn't exist between the United States and Mexico. Well, unfortunately, a lot of people have that attitude, that there are no such things as borders, that they really don't matter, that they're just lines on a map and nobody should pay attention to them, and that we're all just residents of the North American continent. Well, you know what? That's baloney. It's baloney, but only if you will do something about it to prove to the people of this country, and especially to your elected officials, that you know borders matter, that you know the sovereignty of this country is at risk, and that you will take action to make sure that they understand it. That action is best taken by calling your local talk radio stations, writing letters to the editor, and of course, letting members of Congress know that you know. That's the best thing. They're hoping, as a matter of fact, that no one really picks up on this issue of a North American trade association that essentially eliminates borders. But the fact is it's happening. You can see parts of it all of the time. So it's something that we need to stop. America, and I mean the United States of America, not the continent, but the United States of America is at stake. Do your part.
Welcome back. I'm Howard Phillips, chairman of the Conservative Caucus. Our guest is Robert Hoy of Libertas USA, and I guess Libertas EU also. Tell us what Libertas is.
Libertas first started out in Ireland itself, specifically to fight the second time that the Irish had to vote, which is 2007 on this treaty. They voted it down, and of course the European Union just said they won't accept that. Now that they're going a third time. But they are a political party that specifically was for that treaty.
Libertas.
Libertas was, yes. Libertas EU was European Union, and that's their headquarters. But now they also have a political, they've expanded as a political party to Europe itself. And in places like Denmark, for example, they're trying to pull together people who oppose the European Union, too much power for the European Union. But let me say one thing very quick. Now, Libertas is very much like the Tea Parties here. It's grassroots, people volunteer. I am the director of Libertas USA, but we don't solicit money, we don't have an organization. Anytime people want to hear about it, we give them their email over in Ireland, which I just gave to you. Mm-hmm. And we don't get paid for that. We're just doing what we can in America to help the Irish.
Tell me about your relationship with the Tea Parties.
Well, funny enough, you know, I've always admired you, Howie, for being in the new right and helping to elect Reagan. I remember you through those times. The Conservative Caucus did a great job in that time. And I kind of see these times now similar to the 1970s. People in the streets. It's a populist uprising. And I've been mainly concerned with Europe. I had business over there. But really, about 2007, I got energized by the Minutemen program and the Tea Parties. So I'd say right now that I'm hoping to put together a forum to allow these people to speak in Washington, kind of like what we did in the New Right back in the 70s, because I think that obviously they're going to be, the media is not going to listen to them, the media is not going to give them a fair shake. But to answer your question, my relation would be I want to join up and help.
You spent a lot of time in Russia. Mm-hmm. What is the relationship of Russia to the European Union? Do they feel excluded? Do they want to be part of it? Are they trying to restore the former Soviet Union? What's happening?
Well, of course, when you talk about Russia, you're talking about Putin, Mr. Vladimir Putin. I think that what Churchill said, what was about you have a riddle within an enigma and surrounded by a mystery. So really don't know. But I would think, from what little I know about it, is that the Russians feel very rejected. They've always felt that Europe hasn't treated them well. Their viewpoint going way, way back was that they saw themselves as the defender of Europe from all these different peoples flooding Europe. And as they fought and sacrificed, Europe was able to build and become prosperous. That's their historical viewpoint on it. I would think right now they just want to manipulate the European Union to get what they can out of them. I think they definitely want to bring back the Soviet Union, or at least enough of it to where they will be powerful again.
What is the attitude of the former satellites toward Moscow? For example, in Poland, you have a man of whom I'm not very fond, Radek Sikorski, is their foreign minister. I'm not fond of him because he supported the communists in Angola. And to me, that tells a lot. But what is the relationship of former satellites, Poland, Hungary, etc., to Moscow?
Well, obviously, they're very suspicious and fearful of the Russians. It's easy for me as an American to not have that feeling because, we didn't go through that. But a lot of it is based on the Second World War. That was the people alive today remember the killings and the violence that took place. But that's a wartime situation. With the younger generation, particularly the Russians themselves, they have no animosity towards Eastern Europe. But basically, the establishment still very much fears Russia.
So the leaders in those countries are concerned about Russia.
Right.
And that I'm sure that's especially true in the Baltic states.
Baltic states, right, yeah. I think that it would be, so many people have said it, that the Russians are really frightened of the push of NATO. And again, it's so difficult for us to understand because we've never really been heavily invaded.
Yeah, why do we need NATO? In my opinion, it's a mistake for us to continue our membership because the NATO treaty obliges us to go to war if any member of NATO comes under attack. And we ought not be in that position, in my view.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think that I first went to Russia in 1990, and that was under communism. And the big mistake we made was not just getting rid of NATO and starting some other kind of grand alliance with Russia and Europe and America.
So now, I think in the long term, Russia has more to fear from communist China than from anything in the West.
Oh, sure.
Because communist China is emerging as what may someday be the top power in the world, and they're going to be moving in Russia's direction with their population and so forth. And if I were Mr. Putin, I'd be very concerned about helping the Red Chinese.
Well, they really have a terror of China, an absolute terror. And there again was a terrible mistake we made back in the 1990s, not getting them on our side. We tried to play with the race card, basically, between China and Russia, and under Nixon, and now we just built up China into a massive power.
Which owns 31% of our debt.
Yeah,
I mean, they own more of our debt than Japan. They're just about to pass Japan.
Amazing.
In ownership of our debt.
Amazing. Well, what the Russians particularly fear, of course, and they never express this because they don't want to, get China angry at them. But Chinese are coming across the border. Millions and millions are coming across. And if you go to Siberia, there's very few Russians in Siberia. I think it's like 30 million Russians. But that's stretched out over 3,000 miles.
Yeah.
So, and most of the work, physical work done in Siberia, a lot of it is done by Chinese. Mm-hmm. So there.
It's interesting that in one sense, Obama's gestures toward Russia's concerns on things like SDI may be one of the few wise things that he's done in terms of laying the groundwork for better U.S.-Russian relations.
Yeah, I think so. I must confess that I'm impressed with Russia for many reasons.
In many ways, it's a more religious country than the U.S.
Oh, absolutely. No question about it. No question. I've been there probably 17 trips to Russia. And every time I go, I'm amazed at the religiosity of Russia. It may be that the people aren't that religious, but they deeply respect Christianity. And you have, for example, any large political march or meeting or celebration, the principal people who will be there will be the priests, the Orthodox priests.
And Medvedev, who is putatively if you'll pardon the expression, the president of Russia, was put there by Putin. What is the nature of the relationship between Putin and Medvedev?
Well, again, you know, I'm just speaking for, well, actually a lot of people agree with me that Medvedev is there just for the moment and that he's holding the seat, so to speak, for Putin, and Putin will be back. Everyone knows that, you know.
And Putin enjoys considerable popularity among the Russian people.
Absolutely. I think Barack Obama mentioned that. I think he was quoted as saying that when he was in Russia, that he said, boy, this guy is really popular. He was talking about Putin. I first went over there in the 90s, as I say, and I went throughout the 90s. I went there many times, and it was just chaos. It was very frightening. The mafia ran everything. And
people
Putin,
prefer order even to liberty.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. And also you have to understand that the Russians have never had democracy. It's just not, you know, they don't think in those terms. They look upon a lot of things that we consider freedom here as anarchy. And they really don't long for that. What they long for is what Putin's giving them, which is stability, prosperity.
And Putin is making himself a matinee idol, riding horseback, bare-chested.
Exactly right.
So the ladies will be interested.
Well, Putin understands his people, and they always want a strong leader. It's more a personal thing for them.
And he comes across as a more serious figure than Boris Yeltsin, who was a transforming figure.
That's right. That's right.
We're going to have to take a break. When we come back, we'll have some concluding comments from Robert Hoy about his work in many countries as a photographer, as leader of Libertas, and as someone who is very well informed about what's happening in many of the countries of Europe. Stay with us, and we'll have some concluding comments from Robert Hoy.
Hi, I'm United States Representative Thaddeus McCotter from Michigan's 11th Congressional District. As we enter a new millennium of hope and peril, with so many problems besetting our country and yet so many opportunities before us, it is oftentimes tempting to think that your voice doesn't matter. What can one person do to make a difference in the life of their community and their country? Well, the first thing you can do is to contact your legislator. You are one of the sovereign citizens of the United States. You elect your servants to work for you in Congress. Let them know what you think. Send them a letter, send them an email, call them on the phone. Your voice matters, because if you don't raise your voice in the interest of our free republic, who will?
Here's how you can become a citizen lobbyist and influence how your representatives vote. Write a letter to your congressmen and senators. Speak out on a call-in talk radio program. Write a letter to the editor of your local newspaper and call the Conservative Caucus for more information at 703-938-9626.
Welcome back. I'm Howard Phillips, chairman of the Conservative Caucus, which sponsors Conservative Roundtable. If you're interested in the kinds of issues we discuss on Roundtable, please check out our website, www.conservativeusa.org. If you want some of our literature, no cost or obligation, send your name and address to our fax, 703-281-4108, or snail mail us at TCC, the Conservative Caucus, 450 Maple Avenue East, Vienna, Virginia, 22180. Our guest has been Robert Hoy, a professional photographer, a freedom fighter, a man with libertas. And the final 2 minutes are all yours, Robert. Tell us what we need to know.
Well, thank you, Howie. First of all, I wanted to emphasize that what's happening in Europe today with the poor Irish we are very shocked about the kind of things that get the antics that the European Union gets up to. But I believe that the Barack Obama administration really looks upon this as their model. You know, they're not shocked at it. They think that this is the way things should be done.
In other words, they want to integrate North America the way Europe has been integrated.
Absolutely. And because the European Union has gone before them, this is the example that
and
they
the code
follow.
word was economic integration.
Economic.
And those are the code words being used by Calderon of Mexico and Harper of Canada and Obama of the U.S.
Absolutely. And that was the thing to get them in, the trick to pull them in. And now, as they say, they're starting to read the fine print on the contract, which means you give up everything. You have no control over your immigration or anything.
Unelected bureaucrats make decisions that supersede those of the constituent governments.
Absolutely. So even to the point of creating a currency in North America.
The AMRO to compete with the euro.
Exactly. Back in even 15 years ago, when people say that there's going to be one currency in Europe, people laughed. They thought there was, nobody's going to give up.
Well, when Paul-Henri Spaak began things like the Iron and Coal Community, Treaty of Rome, and so forth, European Union looked a long way away. And, And finally, Maastricht was a punctuation mark.
Exactly. And so everything that people here might say, oh, it can't happen in America. They're not going to do that. But basically the left in the United States, they think that this is wonderful. This is what they're looking for.
And unfortunately, many elitist Republicans agree.
They agree with it, exactly. Because
10 seconds.
10 seconds. All right. Well, Russia, I think that we should not have rejected Russia. I think we should have stood by Russia, because eventually we're going to have to work with them. They're a Christian nation, and I think we should work with them.
And we could have a common enemy in Red China.
Absolutely.
Robert, thanks for being with us.
Very much.
We appreciate it. Thank you for watching Conservative Roundtable.